Hello, legends. So, incredibly serious topic that I've wanted to cover for some time now, particularly as within the last, let's just say, a month as a rough time frame, I've had two people that were my friends both uh, take themselves out the game. I'm using euphemisms here because of the platform that you're probably watching this on. And there's a lot of misunderstanding around this subject and how it relates to veterans. So the question is, why are we losing so many veterans to their mental health? What I've done to help have somebody I can bounce my thoughts off, I've invited the wonderful Andy Gallie to the show. Andy does a lot of work in the veterans community in the area preventing gambling and helping people recover from gambling addiction. Andy himself lost hundreds of thousands of pounds, or gambled hundreds of thousands of pounds before he I guess had his epiphany, which led to his healing process. So he's a good man to know, former Royal Navy, and so former Royal Marine and Royal Navy. We're going to mess this right up. Let's get into it. Andy, how are you, brother?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Chris. Good to see you as always.
Yes, mate. Have I spelt your surname right in this thumbnail, haven't I? Gallie.
Yeah, I don't mind how it's spelt, Chris. I've been called worse.
I've, I haven't yet put a podcast out with someone's name spelt wrong. I don't want to start today. So, Andy, first off, massive congratulations on all the work that you've been doing. I'm just going to show a website up here now. This is Beacon Counselling Trust, who run an armed forces community program, battling the odds, and they address gambling related harms in the armed forces community. And he's very much involved in running this program, folks, and I'll let him put this into his own words in good time. But they brought out a video the other day, a film about gambling harms in the military, and it's a massive eye-opener to realise the guy that's next to you in the workplace could absolutely be going through hell. Obviously, that's not just related to gambling. It could be any form of addiction or mental health problem. But I just wanted to say congrats on the film, Andy. How's it been received?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. It was a great bit of work that was commissioned. You mentioned Beacon. We're part of the bigger Armed Forces Gambling Support Network, so 5 different organisations, covering from Scotland with RCA Trust down to Bet No More in London, Break Even in the southeast, and ARA in the southwest. So we're covering the whole country, hence the showing in Plymouth. But the unseen enemy is, it was recorded at first just to highlight, address what we're doing or to highlight what we're doing. But actually, people have found it really, really powerful. And the fact that we've got 3 veterans on there and an affected other of a veteran, it just shows that none of us are exempt from these issues. And the more we talk about it, the more we openly talk about it, and I openly talk about everything that I've ever done and the struggles that I've been through, other people are seeming to come out of the woodwork and say, actually, yeah, I struggle as well. So, and that's what it's there for. That's what I'm here for. That's why I do the work, is to encourage people to stop this ridiculous bravado and alpha kind of attitude and start talking about what's going on in my head. I'm struggling today. I'm really going through it. Actually, I feel like taking myself out of out of it all. And to be able to say that to somebody else, it lifts a weight off. But we don't do it enough because we've got this ridiculous, scenario where we don't talk about our emotions. We don't talk about thoughts and feelings. Because one, I'm sure we'll talk about it in a minute, but from childhood, we're told not to, especially our generation. Well, obviously, you're a good 10-year older, but, it's that childhood where, it's drummed into us. And then you join the forces at a very young age and you're told again to man up, crack on, life in a blue one. It's those kind of things that are instilled in us from a young age that set our boundaries. We don't talk. There's people in the forces today missing home, homesick, lonely, in single living accommodation that can't reach out because they'll be mocked for it. And that's what we need to break down. And I think that's what the video and our work does. It's much bigger than gambling. Gambling is what we use. The root cause is our mental health. The root cause is what are we running from?
Absolutely. So, yeah. It was particularly moving during your presentation, your film, in the Q&A afterwards, that so many members serving in the military stood up and said, how can I get you guys to visit my military base? Because, people, I thought that was military leaders looking after their troops, wasn't it?
Yeah, and we have a lot of uptake from that level of people. So quite senior officers within the Navy, Army, RAF, Marines. We tend to have a little bit of a blocker barrier as it gets further up the chain. So once they go back and say, are we okay to get these people in? They maybe get feedback from higher up within the MOD to say, well, actually, it's not, it's not authorized at the minute. So we get a lot of people going, we've got a problem, we need you to come in, we want you to come in, and then you don't hear any more. So we need to change, again, that attitude from those higher up.
That's a tough one, because we saw that during the, I don't even like to use the COVID word, because, it's all come out now. Everyone was just utterly scammed, and some of us were bloody aware of this from the start. We approached the military. We said, what are you doing to your people? This is going to sting. And sting is a very underrated euphemism in that's not putting it, that's putting it lightly, is what I'm trying to say. And of course, it's because the military's full of yes men. So, everyone jumping through hoops for their next promotion, worried that they're, not going to be able to pay the mortgage if they lose their rank or their job, and completely going against the warriors that we were trained to be. But let's put that to one side. Isn't it funny? I just went to change my shirt and subconsciously I've put on a Ralph Lauren, the same as you.
Yeah.
The difference being, I think yours is an original. This is about £3 in Thailand.
Mine was a £5 off Vinted. So I don't go big, Chris. We go Vinted, But,
yes, and we're going to talk about ego, because this is very important. So, friends, please listen up. This is an incredibly deep subject. Why does the forces lose so many people, either during service or after? I feel I pretty much understand this, although obviously I don't know every single case and I don't pretend to speak for it. But what I've done today is, rather than me just talk to the camera on my own, I've brought Andy here to kind of act as a springboard for my thoughts, ideas, a bit of two-way conversation. But I am going to be talking a lot. If you don't like this, you need to go to the BBC and watch interviews or something, because we've always been a podcast here, Andy. It's always been me getting people on that I want to yap with, and sometimes I've got more to say than them. It's just it's called life, folks. So just wanted to get that out of the way. And yes, I'll lay the table here for the conversation then, Andy. The whole public perception, and I think in the veterans community, it's the same. I think everyone's been indoctrinated and brainwashed to think that trauma is something that you get from the battlefield. Whereas my 55 years on this planet and all the life coaching I've done over the last 20 and the research would dictate that no, what happens maybe in service, and it doesn't have to be something gruesome on the battlefield, it could be getting victimized in training, it could be being ostracized from a job position, whatever it might be. That is a catalyst, but the heart of the problem lies in unresolved childhood trauma. In short, that for the most part, most veterans I meet had some form of abuse in childhood, whether that was neglect, like their own parent was in the forces and they didn't get to see their dad for 9 months a year, and that's just one example of neglect. Abuse, physical, mental, or sexual. And there's something about that psychological makeup as a youngster that makes you a prime target for the military recruiter machine, of which I'll hold my hand up and say, that was totally me, Andy. I joined up, because I couldn't focus in life. I didn't see anything that I wanted to do, and I felt useless at everything. And B, I wanted to prove to my parents, both of whom said I was a failure and wouldn't amount to everything. I was homeless for the first time at 15 in my school uniform, and then homeless again at 17. And I was exactly that damaged person, totally living in my ego. Not a criticism of people, Andy, not a criticism of the forces. I'm just saying this is a difficult conversation to have. And where I'm leading to, I'll hand over to you in a second, is I'm seeing veterans who are my age, maybe 10 years younger, taking themselves out the game based on relationships that have gone wrong, material dissatisfaction, fear, the fear of starting a new career outside the military, and all of these are ego-driven phenomena, as opposed to people who have connected with their higher self. And we'll take this one step at a time. So, am I making any sense, Andy?
100%, Chris. I mentioned before we started, I love talking to you because it, for me anyway, it makes complete sense. And just my own story, you could have been repeating a lot of that there. And, the physical kind of abuse when I was younger, didn't see it. I just thought, well, that's what parents do. Like, that's children just being reprimanded. But actually it went past that. But because it's your parents, you go, oh, well, it's not their fault. And I think so many people join the forces from quite a dysfunctional family background. Might not be masses and masses of trauma. And one of the things I always talk about in the training is that people will often refer to trauma as PTSD, as you say, witnessing something out in Afghanistan, or seeing one of their oppos blown up. But actually, when I look at trauma, it could be 30, 40, 50 different little things that are said to you when you're younger. It could be a teacher telling you you'll never be any good. It could be your sports teacher telling you you're useless at sport. You're never going to be good at sport, but you really want to. It may sound petty, it might sound a bit pink and fluffy, but that sticks with you. And it all sticks at the back of your brain. And as your brain starts filling up with all of these negatives, there's no room for those positives. And I think, we go into the forces and then what we call banter, and I was probably one of the worst for it, very, very, very close to the bone banter, really cutting comments. How many of those comments that I've said have stuck with people over the years, and they still think about it now? They still question themselves when they look in the mirror now, because I know I do with some of the things people said to me. But how do we deal with that? We don't say, actually, that just made me feel really uncomfortable. we laugh, don't we? And we go with it, and we add more and more trauma onto that, just an acceptance. But I think I was dealing with a lad on Friday, currently serving in the army, just being or facing an ABH charge, drinking to excess, just being an absolute nightmare. And, we started talking, and I said about childhood, and he was like, no, it's all good. My dad was a bit aggressive, but he was in the army, wasn't he? That's normal. Then when we dug into it, his mum actually ended up in a mental health sort of facility for alcoholism. His dad was actually really physically abusive. And but we've all been through that. And do you know the point that I think I made to him there was, it's because you surround yourself with people that have been through that. When I was gambling, I surrounded myself with gamblers because they normalize it. If you've been through trauma, you surround yourself with other people that have been through childhood abuse. So that again completely normalizes it, and we don't then talk about it because it's normal. And as soon as somebody breaks that cycle and says, actually, that's not normal, that really needs addressing, this lad then wants to turn his stuff around, but can he? Because it might be too late, So sorry, I'm rambling on now, Chris.
No, mate, you spot on. Everything a valid point. I just wanted to pick up on a couple of things there. So you said banter. I'd say I loved the banter in the forces because that's what it was. It was someone basically saying, I like you, Oppo. I'm going to take the mickey because that's my way of showing, they call me Zoomer on shit. It took me years to work out what it meant. It was the 4-5 lads, so the lads based in 4-5 Commando in Scotland. I was on ship for a year and a half with them. They called me Zoomer. I was about 45, having left the forces for 20 years, when I came across a web page of Scottish colloquialism, and it said Zoomer, Scottish for crazy person. Right?
Yeah.
So I wasn't trying to dispute what you're saying. I'd say there's a lot of snide bullying comments in the forces because there's a lot of very damaged people that you work with, and they can, and I'm not blaming them because from an empathy point of view, they probably got battered when they were kids as well. But I'm not blaming them, but I am saying it made your life a misery. One person, and I think everybody had one of these people, perhaps not everyone, maybe there's some fortunate ones out there, but there's always someone that had your number. Do you know what I mean? There's some ego clash there. They saw something about you that in reality is probably a bit jealous of, or, might have been the way you looked, or you were hit with the girls, or you had a better car than them, or something, or you was, better at marching up and down the square. So that was that. And the other thing is the military program itself. You're planted as a very damaged, vulnerable person. For the most part, not everybody's damaged, but you're planted into a troop of 30, 55 blokes we joined up with, many of whom are scared, worried, frantic. I realised that when on the second day in training, I had to go looking for my denims, my trousers, because someone had been so scared they'd lost theirs that they nicked mine. And I found them hanging up out on someone's locker, and that's how scared people were, that they'd basically commit a crime not to have to face a corporal and say, sorry, corporal, I've lost my bloody trousers, The heavy indoctrination program on top of that, targets will fall when hit, not other teenagers will fall when hit, and they've probably done nothing to you. Let's be honest here.
Yeah.
And that brainwashing that your training teams put you through into, you are the weakest link, Thrall. Everyone's waiting for you through. I was quite lucky. I didn't get, we all got this a bit, But to be honest, I think we all felt lucky it won us. It was that lad over there. And some of our lads, they got it bad. And of course, when the training team started on them, and I just want to say our training team will, for the most part, absolutely wonderful, right? But when the training teams start to highlight a recruit's behaviour, then the fear in and the the group mentality, mob mentality, then starts to target that person as well. And serious trauma. Not nice being in a terrifying environment where you don't know if you're going to pass or fail. You've got everything on the line. It's taken you months, if not years, of preparation to get there. And then suddenly you got 30 blokes that fucking hate you. Or that's the way it feels. You got to be a strong character to, to sort of brush that one off.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think, just going back on the banter one, I'm with you. I will still have banter to this day. Like, I work closely with Matt Losing on this program. And I will still have really good banter now because we know we like each other. And it is those people that have maybe got a little bit of a problem with you that then throw things in there, and yeah, you're absolutely right. Like with the materialistic side, and I meant to say just now and social media drives a lot of that. If I go on social media today, even, and I see somebody's maybe got a new job or they've been promoted or they've, doing really, really well in life, you think I'm not doing enough, I'm lacking. Whereas actually what I'm doing is plenty, absolutely plenty. But that's where that self-belief and self-worth comes in. And, yeah, I just think with the training side, we have very much the same. And it was one of those where you do get targeted, you do get singled out. And I was always, you've met me, I'm about 6'3" and about 18 stone at the minute. And I was probably that when I joined up. So I was always the slowest around that mile and a half, bar maybe one or two. And it would then be singled out that because of Fat Boy, you're having to run it again. So as you say, all those 30 in our class then are like, it's Andy's fault, we've had to do that again. It's Andy's fault, we're having to do the assault course again because he can't be bothered to get around. So rather than actually notice you're struggling and try and build you up and get you to that fitness level, let's target him, let's punish him. And you just want to leave, and part of me, I've always been lucky to have that fight in me to go, I'll prove you wrong. And that's what happened with my recovery is, my therapist called me out and told me I'll just waste the rest of my life and everything else because he knew or hoped, should we say, it was maybe a dangerous ploy, but that I would fight it and go, I'll show you. But some people don't have that. Some people are, my mental health has been wrecked my whole life, but I still have that fight in nature. Whereas some people don't have that, and we don't know who's got it and who hasn't. And the other side, just want to make a point on when we talk about banter again. I was pulled up one day for having banter with this guy from Ghana, and we got on like house on fire. And this officer overheard something I said. He's pulled me to the side and started giving me a bollocking. He said, that's not acceptable. This isn't. I said, but we're, bantering with each other. It's about us. He went, but what you're not considering is who's hearing that. And whoever hears it may be offended. Now, for me at the time, I was like, mate, that's not my problem, is it? But now my thinking is very much, I don't know who I'm offending around me because it's true. I might be making a cutting comment that somebody's gone through that trauma and I might be adding to it. So it is just about thinking about what we're saying. We haven't got to, I'll never ever rein it in fully. I'm not able to. But it's about being aware of who's around you and who you could be damaging.
Yeah, when I did I did a youth work course. My degree is in youth work, youth and community. And a placement I was on was working with young offenders with a dear ex-colleague from the Marines called Trevor Philpott, who crazy as life is, he was the major that handed me my green beret when I passed out of training, and we ended up working together, which was nice. He's Trev's dead now, died of Alzheimer's sadly, or the effects of it, I suppose you should say. But when he started this centre for these young lads coming out of prison that wanted to make changes in their life. One of them was, they called him Packy. And he went along with it. You think, oh, blah, blah, blah. And when I wrote up my report for my supervisor at college, and I said, yeah, it's quite funny the way that everyone calls him Packy and he, laughs it off. And my supervisor, doing the job that he was paid to do and doing it very well, went, hang on a sec, Chris. What do you think that lad's internalised by that dialogue? Thousand years of racism or whatever, depending when you think what slavery went back to. A lesser version of himself. He was just pointing out that people might laugh and go along with it, but does someone who's overweight really want the nickname lard ass just because all the lads have decided? And so that was that. The other thing you mentioned about the identity, it is funny when you see someone who's really struggling in adulthood, and as a coach, this is the childhood link here. This is just how the cookie crumbles. And yet they will defend their damaged childhood to the hilt. My dad was such a good guy. Oh, yeah, well, yeah, he was, he was in a RAF and, well, I never really saw him, to be honest. He'd come back like once, twice a year, and then he went off with another woman by the time I was like 7. But yeah, I had a great childhood. My dad was wonderful. And it's, yeah, we get it. We get that you want to protect what you know and the people that you love, and every kid, especially a lad, looks up to the, father. But that model I just described is not one conducive to good mental health, later on in life if it goes unresolved. The downward cycle, I think we should talk about. So here's how I explain this in my coaching and my videos. You've got this deep-rooted childhood trauma. You've got a very fractured sense of identity. You're probably typical of someone who goes into flight, fight, or freeze mode quite at the drop of a hat. You join the military because there's something in you, I don't know. You want the answers, you want to prove yourself, you want to, I can go and kill people. I'm up to the job. I'll protect my country. Or whatever. There's a variety of reasons people join up, obviously. You stay in a career, and let's just say, I don't know, let's just say you serve 10 years. During that 10 years, you're paid in sickness, in health. You've even got your own padre if you want. Your toughest decision you're going to have to make in 10 years is which mountain bike do you buy? Do I get one with the derailleur gears or the drum set or whatever? Yes, you put up with some stuff during the way, but along the way, and you've got two options there. You either turn around and like battle it out, which that happened a lot when I served, or you look at the size of the geezer and think, I better sit this one. I'll take one for the team here. You leave after 10 years, you've never had to address the trauma that's building up inside of you and all these little events along the way that have turned it into complex, layered trauma. You leave, you get a package that, I don't know, they gave us £2,000. You could go and retrain. I spent it to go and see Tony Robbins and do the firewalking. Some people put the money in their pocket and go and work in their mate's pub. That's how it was. But it doesn't exactly prepare you for making that jump into reality where people don't follow the same rules as the military. People don't understand often things like loyalty. Not saying that they always do in the military as well, but you got this culture shock when you come out. You're working for a boss who's a bit of a knob. He doesn't even know the Marines are. He's like, oh, is that all that army stuff, is it? Doesn't care. Your ego takes a right check there. Next thing you know, you're like walking off the job because it's just, or you start self-medicating with the alcohol or the substances. You're medicating your feelings of trauma that you can't cope with, these emotions, this anger, this feeling of inadequacy, this feeling like, why am I always the different one? All right, alcohol will fix that. So your 2 tinnies a night start going up to 6 tinnies a night, 12. Then your mate's bringing around a bit of sniff, bit of puff, whatever it is. Then the good woman in your life is like, honey, the kids can't be seeing this. We're going to go over to Nan's, sort it out. So suddenly you got your childhood trauma, you got a substance problem, you got mental health problem, you got breakdown of relationships, you're unemployed, you got a mortgage that you got to pay, you're terrified, you don't know how to do it. What do? You go and self-medicate some more, don't you? And I'm just giving a rough kind of example here of how people end up on their ass, Andy, And the whole point for having this video with you is we need to recognize this journey, this downward spiral, and understand that it's childhood trauma is the root of it. The stuff in Afghanistan, although it's hideous and unpleasant, and it's only for a few people. I think I gave this example before. When I was on active service, the guy behind me on patrol was shot 3 times. It's like one of the most exciting days of my life. It was like exactly what we signed up for. Would have been better still if we'd managed to get some rounds off to the firing point. And I should say here for our friends at home, my Oppo lived, folks. Fairly unscathed, bar a bruise that was like that big. It would have been a different, obviously, had he been taken out. But the point is, we did join up for this excitement. We did know that we were going to get in some scraps and it wouldn't always end nice. And we were adults. We made this choice and we had the cognitive ability to take something that happens in battle or conflict and eventually work through it and then compartmentalize it and move, right? And then move on with your life. Childhood trauma is very different. Your mind has been damaged at such a young age, your brain wasn't fully formed. So your body in its infinite wisdom stores it like in yourself in a place that you can't just get in there, get it out in therapy, deal with it, move on. It's kind of like in this unknown place, as it were. And I'm just highlighting this because the public are so deluded that they worship the guy, in battle dropping napalm on women and children, who then gets his legs blown off, comes back a hero, absolute hero. Public speaking events, and I'm not, I'm not having a go at this guy. He's just doing what he needs to get by. Whereas the child who got battered unconscious twice a week by a parent who themselves was traumatized and was unhealed or not ready to have children, or that kiddie that's getting raped and having cigarettes stubbed out on him, or the one that's crying because his daddy, came back off leave, said hello, went straight up the pub, and then disappeared on his submarine again for 9 months. That child, when they grow up and they experience what you and I have been through, this bizarre healing process which smashes you down and makes you lose almost everything. That person, when they end up homeless on the street, they have the same people that idolize if I use the term warmongers, I'm just using it in context here, as opposed to the battered kiddie. just see how utterly perverted society's thinking on this. They'll spit on the abused child when they see him home, in adulthood, when they're homeless on the street. They're scumbag, homeless. Why don't you get a job? Oh, I'll give you money, but you'd only spend it on drugs. Yeah, freaking right, they'll spend it on drugs because they got to deal with people with the mindset you've got. It's called society. And I'm, like I say, I'm not trying to offend people, Andy. I'm just trying to highlight the complexity of this scenario and the misunderstanding the public has. Now, sorry to hand over to you. At some point in this process, it needs to be recognized that this is what's happening. And that person, when the wife or the girlfriend has left them, when the kids have been taken away because they're an unstable parent, when they've lost the final job and they're on the bottle of whiskey for breakfast, they can't work, or whatever the scenario might be. It doesn't even have to be, substances don't even have to be involved. But something needs to step in there before they take themselves out of the game. And then this journey that they've been on, this complex journey that we've just unraveled, needs to be understood, brought to the surface, discussed and healed using the appropriate interventions to allow that person to move on. But at the moment, we're still at the stage of everyone who goes to war is a hero. And because of the brainwashing that Hollywood have put people through with their Rambo film. So just a quick aside, after Vietnam, people wanted peace, Andy, right? There was it started the peace movement in America. The psychopathic bankers and their dark network, the one that JFK pointed out, they couldn't have this. You can't have a peace movement when you're planning a quote unquote new world order and you're going to invade this company, and then that chap in Iraq, he's got to go at some point. Then we're looking at the boy in Venezuela and the laddie in Iran, whatever it might be. You can't have everyone becoming peaceful and actually loving each other. So what did they do? They turned the war scenario into, look, you might not support the war, but you've got to support the veterans. You see what they've done here? They've got Johnny Rambo there crying his eyes out at the end of his film. No one understands me. I was picking up my buddy and he was blown to bits. And, they spat at me. They called me baby killer. And slowly through their Hollywood machine, they Platoon, another example. No discussion of the illegality of that conflict and who gained from it at the expense of, thousands upon thousands of young American lives. No, it would just, Platoon was like, focus on the individual in this foxhole and what he's going through. Off the back of that, you had, thank you for your service, right? This is where all this came from. May I buy you a cup of coffee, sir? Utterly our brainwashed youth that don't understand the complexity of this picture. And that's, I think, where we're at. We have a gross misunderstanding of the role of the military, the role of the individual in the military, their makeup, what constitutes trauma, the trauma journey, and ultimately what needs to be done to prevent people taking themselves out of the game. So I did talk a lot then. I'll own that one. Is that making sense, Andy?
Yeah, 100%. Again, I think it's difficult to pick all your points because genuinely there are loads there that you're just resonating with so much of it. And I think one of the ones was where we talk about that joining up, and you said earlier about the time, the money, and the effort that's put into effectively breaking you down to build you back up into a soldier, sailor, or whatever. They put all of that effort in and all of that time. Yet when we come to transitioning out of the forces, you literally just get given a little bit of money and told to go and find a course. You know, that last 12 months needs to ideally be breaking you down from being a soldier, teaching you about all of this stuff, getting you to open up about your mental health. I'm sure there'll be plenty of people who watch this who go, oh, these two are a bit soft and a bit pink and fluffy, aren't they? Not in the slightest. Actually, I've got to talk about this stuff to keep myself safe, but also to make sure that others are able to open up and be safe. Now, that to me is the role of the forces. They should be doing this 12 months before your discharge date, along with all of the career transition partnerships, with all of the employment, because you could find me a job as a CEO of a top company. I'm earning 200 grand a year. Brilliant. But if I'm not right mentally, I'm going to last about a month or 2 months in that job. You mentioned earlier about sort of that culture in a civilian office. I remember my first office, and I went in, somebody left themselves logged on. I've sent an email, to the boss. Next thing you know, I'm in being threatened with a disciplinary. And I'm like, well, that's normal. He left himself logged on. That's not my problem. But in a civvy office, it's like, it's not acceptable. So all of a sudden, you feel like an alien. Like they don't get your jokes. And if they do get your jokes, they're offended by them. And I always accept that they are, not always of good taste. But you just don't, you feel alone. And I always relate it to, it feels like being picked up, blindfolded, placed in the middle of a foreign country where you don't speak the language, you don't understand the culture, you don't know the religion. But the one thing that's a constant and you can be guaranteed by is that my substance of choice or gambling will be there and will make me feel the same way every single time. So everything else has changed, but that one thing, alcohol or gambling or whatever it may be, stays the same. And I know I can go and get it, and I know I can feel safe with it, and I know I don't have to think about all of this other shit that's going on. Because that's why I use gambling, because I didn't want to deal with my childhood. I didn't want to deal with the stuff that went on. And I also didn't want to be one of those people that just blamed. I was always conscious of being that bloke who blames everybody else. And I didn't. And it was my therapist again who said, you need to bag up that blame, because it's right that you do put blame on it, but you leave it at the door. You don't have to tell them, but you've just got to put it all, whether you do that in a no send letter and you get it all out there and leave it where it is. That's all well and good. It's still there. As you say, I can't access it. That's there, and little bits drip out all the time. I've been in recovery for quite a while, doing really well. But some days that childhood trauma will still come back and hit me like a plank in the face. It may be questioning myself. It may be that self-doubt. It may be guilt with all of the things that I've done, because I have done pretty bad stuff. And as I say, that transition period out is where we really need to work on people, work on that person. Because we mentioned that loss of sense of identity the morning when you wake up, after you've left, the loss of purpose. You've got no work to get up for. You've lost that banter and camaraderie, your service family. But you then combine that with the practicalities of, I moved out of a married quarter, so I didn't have a mortgage, didn't have security of a house. And I was only paying £200 a month for that married quarter. That included water rates, council tax, and rent on a 3-bedroom house. I'm in Falmouth in Cornwall, and that was £1,200 just for the rent. Another 300 for the council tax, water rates. And all of a sudden I've got no income because I've just left the forces. I've got all of these bills to pay, and I haven't got any of that security of, oh, well, I've got my meals on board, or I've got my accommodation, or I've got, so all of a sudden my pension pot, I only come out with half pension and, resettlement money. That's dwindling at a great rate. And I'm also a gambler. So that's dwindled within about a week. I've got no way of getting that back. I've got no security. So all of a sudden I'm facing all of these things. And as you say, a partner who's just at a wit's end because she's not used to you being at home. You're also now at home 24/7. You're throwing out her routine, the children's routine, and you want it done your way. but she's used to doing it that way. So we add all of those complications in a relationship on. And we also think if that relationship ends, as you said earlier, that's going to define me. If I'm single during this process and my partner's left me and that's all gone to shit, others are going to judge me. He's left and his whole life has just gone to shit. So, we've got so many things to deal with on top of a shed load of childhood trauma. It's not an easy period at all. And I can see why people end up just going, I want out of this. I done it on 3 different occasions, just wanted to just be gone. And there's still, I think, some days during recovery that I thought, I wish there was just a button that I could press that went end it now, and I genuinely think I'd have pressed that button. It's that much of a want to do it that actually people would say it's cowardly to not do it, or he is not brave enough to do it. But it's not. It's again the selfishness and the guilt and everything else that stops me going through with it. But it's still because you're self-doubt all the time. Even in a civilian workplace where there's competition and it's almost like a sales market. It's really, really difficult to deal with because as somebody with a neurodivergent brain, I genuinely want things to be nice. Like I want everybody just to get on and work and support each other. And when it's not, I hate the world, because in the forces, we did ultimately support each other day in, day out, and we had each other's back. In the civilian world, people will stab you in that same back to get where they want to get to or prove their point. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I think there's a link here as well that possibly needs further research, but I think that my substance use, abuse, call it whatever you want, that went on for years really, although there was definitely a point where I started the healing journey, the epiphany. That came quite quickly actually. But I wonder if there's a buffer there, because I'll be honest, I've never been suicidal. I'm not, I, but I have been in an area that was very grey, where you think, fucking, what is the point? What's the, just everything seems insurmountable and overwhelming in this society, and it's getting worse. There's too much technology. It's too difficult to understand it. It takes far too much of your time just to work out how to contact the bloody gas board or something, and then you get chucked off the phone line and you've had to take 2 hours out the office to go and sort this out, and now it's going to need and I sort of get it, but I wonder what the link there is between the self-medicating, because with substance misuse, even though it's not a good way to self-medicate because it has big repercussions, i.e. come down, hangover, gradually losing everything that you've built up, but it does act as that buffer. You can always nip down the shop and get a few cans. I'm not suggesting people do. I know people that have taken themselves out of the game that they didn't even drink, Andy. I don't know what else went on behind the scenes. One of my friends, it was the day after he left the forces and he served a full career with an extension, and he didn't drink. What was going through his mind the day he stepped foot in Civvy Street that led to that? And this is the conversations that need to be had, where the research needs to be done. Shall we now, because I think we've covered this enough, we've covered the childhood trauma, we've covered the in-service, ups and downs, the complex layered trauma. We've highlighted how it's not necessarily what you see in combat. In fact, that's more just a catalyst for some people. We've highlighted the journey that you can leave the Marines, you still haven't healed because it's never been a thing, and then suddenly the pressures of life, you start self-medicating or ruminating, getting into that dark place which can take you down. Let's talk about the hope behind this, because no matter what I've been through, in fact, some people say, Chris, you really turn your life around. And I say, what do you mean? I think I've always been on the right journey. If you look at my life now, my beautiful family, I wouldn't change that for the world, Andy. I wouldn't have got there. I mean, I met my girlfriend. We were working as substance misuse specialists together in a clinic. That's where my journey led me. We had the most wonderful child that I still can't believe it. I think God was having a bloody day off when he made that decision. I think he'd been on the absinthe or something. So I think that I'm not saying that when people have been upset along the way, when I've upset people, that I'm proud of that or anything, but it is just the way it is. I can only take today because it's only today that exists. So we need a societal change of thinking, that when you see someone struggling, that, as the Chinese say, yes, it's crisis, but crisis represents opportunity and growth. Did for you, did for me. We'd be great guys to go and sit in a pub with. Sorry, I shouldn't say pub, should I? Pub for your alcohol-free beverage, folks, is what I meant.
Yeah.
And in fact, that alcohol-free Guinness is really, really nice, actually. I think I might just stop the podcast now and go and have one now. So, here's where my journey led. I'm not sure how this transposes onto somebody else, Andy. I genuinely don't. I don't know if you need to reach the right time, but I'm chucking this out in case it resonates with someone who's struggling or a professional out there who wants to learn more. This is actually how it was. My life got so low, I was still in that denial. I was still self-medicating with the drugs. I didn't even drink, funnily enough. That was never my issue then. I went on to drink a lot when I tapered the drugs down. But I got so low, I was there living in a smashed up hovel, no friends, no nothing like that, solitary existence. My fortnightly shop, I was like £1.86. I'm not taking a piss. All the rest of it, you know what it's like. All the rest of it went on gear. That was my priority. I'd go and buy white sliced loaf for, 17p back in the white label, the supermarket own brand days. When it just started, I'd buy like a big 5 kilo bag of pasta and a 5 kilo bag of porridge oats for 80p each or something. I lived on porridge and pasta with as much milk as I could preciously spare. The rest was water, 20 sugars for energy because I was starving all the time. Amphetamine tends to do that to you. I'd I'd cook it up in a microwave, and then I'd eat it like a wild animal, Andy. That's how starving and emaciated I was all the time. I could, getting them calories in your body, you've never tasted nirvana like it. It was, I can't explain that in words. Anyway, I'm cold, I'm shivering, I'm lying on the floor in my boxer shorts where I crashed out after not sleeping for probably anything up to 9 days I wouldn't sleep for. And I woke up and I was ravenous, and I wanted to go out to the shop, but I couldn't go because I was too ashamed of myself. I was a mess. I had marks down my arm. The clothes I wore, I'd nicked off a heroin dealer in Oakhampton. And I could hear my neighbours and the kids in the street outside playing football. I knew if I went out, they'd be like, Chris, come and play football with us. And I couldn't face them. I couldn't face someone going, what's the matter with you? You don't, you're gradually looking sicker and sicker, right? And so in that moment, I had my epiphany where I suddenly saw that little child, that one who'd been through stuff that he shouldn't have had to go through, the one that adults neglected, overlooked, and abused. And I suddenly got it. Who was abusing that little kid now? Now that kid's a man. I was doing it, Andy. I was the one doing it to myself in some misguided notion that I was living a rock and roll life and I don't care, I'm going to do things my way, and if I want to, drink whiskey for breakfast and smoke whatever yeah, Chris, where's it got you, mate? Have a reality check. You used to be a handsome bodybuilding Marine driving a nearly new BMW with a business in Hong Kong whilst you were in the Marines, with a mobile phone when people used to go, what's that? Is that a phone? Right? I know this is all ego bullshit, right? But back then, when I'm crying, having this nervous breakdown, wondering what I was just like, what have you done to yourself? Mate, what have you done? You've lost it all and you've driven yourself to near death. And why? Because you're just trying to soothe that inner child who got battered and he shouldn't have done. Mate, it's got to stop. It's got to fucking stop, and it stops now, Chris. It fucking stops now. You don't bow to fucking no one, mate. You go out that door, and that was the thing, I used to hold my head up high because, I was like that kid when they used to cane the kids in school or batter them, which was normal when I was at school. And the kid would go, dinner, 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 dinner. Like, because they couldn't, they was going through abuse in their home life and it was being manifesting as misbehavior or perceived misbehavior in school. They didn't need another battering. This is where my mind was at. I could see that little kid now, And so what I did, Andy, cut long story short, I did a few things. First off, I took action. So important. If you take action, the universe gives you back tenfold. It just does. Nothing comes from sitting on your ass, being miserable and ruminating, except more depression. My action at that point was only spend 10 quid a fortnight instead of all your benefits money. Just spend it, get it over and done with, have your fucking fix and your quick high, move on, When you wake up and you're in that depressed, come down, that horrible, lonely place, I know that when you've put your last quid in the fruit machine and you turn and you're like, oh, I've fucking done it again, haven't I? I've just spent all my bloody monthly wages. I've got nothing. Imagine that, and being physically starving and exhausted and lonely and depressed and anxious, right? I thought, no, when you wake up tomorrow, Chris, in that state, you're going to get out of that. I slept in a sleeping bag on a sofa bed for a year, mate. I couldn't face going upstairs lonely on my own. I know it sounds silly. Plus, I couldn't afford to heat the house. So I just lived in one room with the door shut, keeping the heat in, right? I thought, I'm going to wake up tomorrow, rather than roll over and try and sleep off the depression, I'm going to jump up, throw open them curtains, and I'm going to say, good morning, son. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity called life, because a lot of my mates are not here anymore. They died in horrible circumstances, and I'm here, and I'm going to smash it, right? And then I'm going to make myself a cup of tea, and I'm going to get as much satisfaction from drinking a simple cup of tea as I do from bloody doing that stuff that's killing me. And what happened was, The next day when I woke up, I had taken the first step on what is called the journey to enlightenment. The actual physical step. No, I'm not talking about all the knowledge I'd learned over the years. I'd taken that step, and the universe recognised that, Andy, because I was meeting it with a higher energy. And when you raise your energy, look at happy people. Where does life meet them? It bloody meets them there, doesn't it? And they get happier and they get there, and then life meets them there, and they achieve things, and they have a nice circle of friends. They have good possession, stuff that makes them happy. And what happened when I woke up? The sun was shining through the window, and I just knew it. I just took it as a sign. And I felt physically different. I had changed because I knew I'd accessed something that I hadn't done before. I didn't know what it was, but I can understand when people use terms like God now, or spirit, universe, although I try and shy away from that sort of talk because people think you're talking about religion, and I'm absolutely not. And I'd taken action, so I'd cut down on the gear. I'd shown gratitude. Morning, sun, thank you. And most importantly, I left the past behind. I said, stop carrying this ball and chain. It's all done and dusted. Are you happy being you? Well, sort of, yeah. Well, then that's the way it's had to be, isn't it? Not nice, but you're still here. And in that moment, I forgave the people in the past that had done me wrong, because the universe had given me, in this moment, it gave me true empathy, and I realised, they was like that to me because they had all this done to them, didn't they? They thought this was normal, that this was their trauma response. Doesn't mean I'm saying what they did was right. I'm not forgiving the action. I'm forgiving the individual as I would want to be forgiven for when I'd wronged people. And that was it, Andy. It took a lot of years to get to where I am now. And I can't believe that, as I sit here now, I've chose to go without meat, to go without drugs and alcohol, to live a frugal lifestyle, to jog around the block in the morning, or go gym, or go for a swim, to have a hot shower, cold shower, to get back primate instinct and stimulate the vagus nerve, which is your feel good, your tree of life, your feel good system. I choose, when I get in a stressful situation or stop reacting with relationships with people, put that to one side, connect with this beautiful higher power that gave you everything and that put you in paradise, Chris. And I don't aspire to anyone else's journey. Sometimes the old green-eyed monster gets you, but I recognise it, and I stop myself and I think, no, I'm wishing Andy good luck today. In reality, Andy's the universe experiencing himself in another meat suit just like me. So you're me and I'm you, Andy, which kind of makes it that easier, And that was it. It's been a long journey. I'm still refining it. Rowing the Atlantic, last winter, found myself back on the beer again, just eating absolute, not absolute shit, what people would think was a good healthy meal, but abundance of carbohydrates, flooding my body with sugar or glucose, putting up my inflammation, putting up my illness. So I've said a lot again, but I just want people out there to know my advice to you: if you're struggling, leave the past behind, heal it, forgive, and move on. take action. One of the best things ever done to me, I was bunking with a mate when I wasn't very, he went, Chris, get down to job centre today. I was like, oh no, I've got this, he went, no, get down the job. I went down the job centre, got a job as a barman. Didn't last very long because I was still quite unwell, but it showed me that I had the power, just like making your bed in the morning. So be grateful for this life because a lot of people haven't got it. Take action, leave the past behind. Does that resonate at all with your story, Andy?
I just want to thank you for sharing it, because I know people will watch it and reach out for help or take their own action, because it's massively, massively powerful. You don't come back from stuff like crystal meth, or you don't break that easily. No chance. I can relate it. Of course, I can relate to it with the gambling and people. I think that's where the gambling, I mentioned it before in your podcast, is so misunderstood. The stigmatization, and it stops people reaching out for help or taking that action, because, well, what you're going on about is gambling. It's stupid. Actually, it's probably one of the most damaging addictions you can have, and probably one of the hardest to break. But I think hearing you and saying about that taking action, that's exactly why we do the work we do today, and why we do this kind of podcast, is because there will be people out there going, well, I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm just going to, it's easier to end it. It's easier to take myself out of it than it is to, one, have to admit everything to people, and two, have to deal with it and have to put the work in. Because let's be honest, like you've just said, it is hard work. Anybody who thinks recovery is, well, you just stop one day and you crack on with your life the next, like, good luck with that. I still work daily on it. I still do daily reflections. I still look at, why did I act the way I did yesterday? Like, did I, even if I had a really good day yesterday, why was it a good day? What did I do differently to the day before that was a bad day? Can I replicate that more? So it's a daily reflection, and gratitude, you mentioned, is a massive, massive part of that. Is being grateful for where you are. I mentioned to you before the show that there's, stuff going on, and I'm getting all excited about it and everything else. And then you take a step back and you go, do I really need that? Or do I just need a simpler life? Like, because what happens is, when I'm busy and I'm doing all this and doing all that, and I'm here, there, and everywhere, actually what gets left behind is my partner, my children. Although they're adult children, they're 25, 24, and 21. The reality is, I've probably messaged them once in the last 10 days. Like, what's all that about? Why am I not messaging them every day? But I'm emailing people and messaging people and taking training every single day for hours at a time, and I'm neglecting them again. They might be just living their own life going, oh, I forgot about dad. Maybe that's the case, but I need to know that I'm doing the right thing. And one thing that used to really bug me with my partner, she's very much about, do the right thing, and, the right thing will be done by you. Anything the universe means for you will not pass you by. And I was like, oh, like, I used to get frustrated with it, because I'm like, you're just full of it. It's all this spiritual stuff. And do you know what? It's so, so true. I get out of life what I put into it. If I want to go back to what I done, and I harmed people through theft, through fraud, through my behavior, narcissism, gaslighting, all of those things I done, if I put that out there, I'm getting it back. Karma is a real thing, and it is coming back at me. Whereas today, I would give up my only spare hour to go and support somebody, because I know that they need that hour. And when I do that, the next day something good happens, or the next month, or the next year, or whatever. And it's not about money. It really isn't. I could probably go off and try and find other jobs and earn more money and do this. You need money to live, and money is, terrible at times. But actually what matters is people. And I keep saying this when we see big, big organizations out there professing to offer all of this support and offer that support. And I've done a lot of work in prisons recently, and a lot of veterans in prisons. Very similar stories for our own, very damaged. And I'll continue to do that work, because, I can just see the need. And actually they need that. People like yourself, people like me, who they can look and go, actually, if he can do it and he can do it, I can definitely do it. I'm not as ballsed up as they are. Um, but we see a lot of people saying we offer this support, we offer that support, especially within the veteran world, and even within the recovery space. We do work in prisons. No, you don't. I was talking to somebody the other day, and it's very all fur coat and no knickers. And it really bugs me now, because actually you could give an organisation £100,000 and they'll run an advertising campaign with it, or you could give a small organisation £100,000 and they will go and reach 1,000 people that year, or even 10 people, and really change their lives. So I've gone off on a tangent, but it's about this support system that you're a part of and I'm a part of, is supporting people and giving them just our insights. We haven't got all the answers. There's peer support out there, there's therapy out there, there's counselling, there's psychiatrists if you need that level, there's rehab centres. But the reality is, it all goes back to what you said, which is you have to take action. I cannot drag somebody there. Well, I can drag them to rehab, but they'll be leaving the next day. It has to come from you. If you're struggling today, whether that be gambling, drink, other substances, whatever that may be, the help is there. And it also comes down to yourself. You've got to want it. You've got to want to do it. Because if you don't, you will end up taking yourself out of the game.
Absolutely. So to summarise, I'll just say a few things and I'll hand over to you. Always reach out for help, friends. If you're out there struggling in any way, take that action that I did. I never went to any self-help groups. I was always, back when I had my problems, the only real option was NA, a form of AA. And I just knew, coming from a sort of pride background, I was never a victim in my story, although clearly I sort of was, right? But in my mind, I couldn't be around people telling me that I was damaged or that I was a broken machine, and I just had to accept that. Like, fuck off. I'm a massive legend. That's just how it is. I think everyone is a massive legend. I'm not going to join a group that purposely, and I'm not knocking at all. If you got kids and you're struggling and they're going to lose their daddy or their mummy, get yourself to whatever works for you. But what did work for me is I reached out to the Royal British Legion. It was the right time. They gave me a career grant. They applied to a few different funding streams, SAFA and the like, and they got me £2,000 together. And so I retrained as a development worker, and I went to work in Mozambique to teach street kids as a volunteer. I didn't get paid for it or anything. It was a brilliant part of my healing experience, getting myself back online again. But folks, my advice is, reach out. If you were in a troop and you ain't got the balls to hold your hand up and say, look, Sarge, I'm fucking struggling a bit here, then you're not being brave and strong. You're the weakest link. And so reach out. There's a great organisation called Smart Recovery if your thing is substance abuse. Very hard to feel any degree of positivity towards life if you're battling substance abuse, simply for the depressing nature of it. So reach out. Be careful taking advice from friends, because they're not qualified and they'll just say, oh, Andy, stop. You just stop that shit, mate. Just stop it. As though it's oh so simple. Remember, you're massively loved. Way more than you know. If you go taking yourself out of it, you have no idea how many thousands, I'm going to say, people will shed a tear for you. How do I know that? Well, we've just seen it happen in the Marines community. friend of mine put an absolutely horrific goodbye post on Facebook. It was very, what can you say? It was full of love and it was a gentle, but to read that by the time you read this, I will no longer be here. It broke so many people. And the crazy thing is when I went to message him and go, no, don't be silly, you know, pick up the phone. I tried everything. Our last conversation was he'd mailed me something while I was rowing the Atlantic, and I messaged back, oh, nice one, legend, kiss, kiss. And he went, no, Chris, you're the legend. You're so inspirational for people. Kiss, kiss, or something like that, you know. And to think when he messaged me that, he was just about to take his own life. And I meant it when I said, you're a legend. I meant that. And it reminded me of the time when I was in the Northern Ireland conflict. I shared a 2-man room, or grot, I think we used to call it. And I won't say the chap's name, but I had a corporal in mine, Lance Jack. And he kind of had quite a rough time by the troop. He was the brunt of a lot of, you know, not banter, but bullying basically. But he was a good guy. And he said to me, and he said he had a photo of his wife topless in like Marbella or wherever it's been on holiday. Those things that, you know, we used to do. And he sort of points at her one day, Andy, and he says, yeah, it's not going that well. We've been married 2 years and I've seen her for 3 months. Or I've seen her for 3 months a year. And he listed all these exercises and Norways and Arctic, Northern Islands that he'd done. And next thing you know, he'd taken himself out again, just literally just up the road from my dad's house, funnily enough. And I always sort of regret that I never had a chance to just tell him I really liked you. You know, I used to hear the banter, but I saw through that. You know, I thought you was a good guy. Plus, you really helped me out once when someone was lying about me, and you stood up and said, "No, that guy's not telling the truth. I know for a fact because of this." And that, you know, sometimes you need one person to have your back when you're facing the wrath of others. So I'll say to anyone out there, if you're in a dark place, remember you're massively loved. It's just that society doesn't make you feel like that. It always brings the monsters close and puts the angels far away, but in reality it's probably the other way around. So take action, reach out, remember you're massively loved, and also you're on the warrior's journey. As wrong as it might seem, or as dark as it might seem, this is the universe looking at you, and he's saying, Andy, you're a massive legend, mate, but you haven't realised it yet. And your actions, you know, they're not going to lead you to happiness and that nirvana that we all seek. So I'm going to chuck some challenges in front of you. In your case, it's going to be gambling, mate. You're going to try to appease your childhood trauma by self-medicating through the high you get from putting money in them machines or betting on bloody the Betfred app or whatever. And it's going to take you so low. Do you know what? You're going to find me. You're going to find God. You're going to find universe. You're going to find the meaning of life. I sent you on this journey. Don't let me down. I want to see you come back from it. And this is, I think, what people need to understand. Be proud of your journey, you know, and then at the right point, leave it behind, move on with your life. That's what I've got to add. Over to you, Andy.
Yeah, it's a hell of a journey. And there will be people out there today, as you say, on their own journey, their own really rough road of a journey, And I used to look back and think, why couldn't I just had a normal life? But actually, I look back now and would I have all of the knowledge I've got now? Would I have the resilience I've got now? Would I have any of that if I hadn't have been through what I've been through? And you look at the work I do now, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to do, with the armed forces gambling. Would I be able to go back into a barracks this afternoon and go and talk to a load of army lads and make sure that actually all of those mates, you talk about opening up to your mates, and it probably is the worst thing you can do, not because they're horrible people or they don't believe you've got a problem. They feel massively uncomfortable and they don't know how to help. So the easiest thing to do is make a joke of it. But because they make a joke of it, you think they don't care. They do. They really care, you know. And I think that's what we were saying earlier. If when I got to those points of wanting to take myself out of all of this, if I had opened up to a mate at that point, he'd probably laugh and joke and take the piss because he feels uncomfortable. But what that would do is potentially tip me over the edge, because if even my closest mate isn't able to help, and that's where I talk a lot, a massive advocate for peer support, for using that lived experience, and that's great. And what I believe we can do, or I can do, and you can do, is we can take those people from being really reticent to reaching out for help and to taking action by telling our own stories, by talking like we do, by being very, very honest. We can get them to the point that they will believe in us enough and believe that therapy, counselling, whatever, whichever route they want to take, is safe for them. So we have a lot of clinicians that say, oh, lived experience, peer support, it's not good. They don't know what they're doing. It can be dangerous. It can be this. Do you know what? Without that peer support, breaking down those initial barriers, especially within the armed forces, those people will not ever get to therapy. you know so you either put us in first, reach out to us today and just have a chat to us. That's all we're doing. If they message you after this, they can message me after this, find me on social media, do whatever, find a way to get hold of one of us and say, mate, I'm absolutely just wrecked, and we will go, yeah, get it. you know what do you need from us? Because that's the question I always ask, is what do you want from me? What do you need from me? And actually just to listen, mate. Yeah, no worries. you know I don't need to delve into their deep and why. We all have to understand our why, but the reality is, if you try and get to that why too soon, you can really do some damage to people, and you can tip them to that edge of wanting to take themselves out. So it is a balancing game between getting them the right support, but that's why we're there. We're not there to preach. We're not there to, we just get it. And recovery takes so many, like you'll get some organizations say, well, therapy is the only way, 8 to 12 sessions, and that's what but actually it just takes different routes, doesn't it? Your route, you'll take action, you're strong, you'll do that yourself, and it's hard and it's horrible. Others will go on peer support groups. I used to think they're going to be like a Jeremy Kyle show. Genuinely, when I come out of rehab, and I thought, I'm not going on a peer support group. It's going to be a load of people I don't get on with, I don't know, and actually I'm not as bad as them. And do you know what? I found some of the best people, the most genuine people in my life are in recovery. you know so yeah, absolutely, that's where I want to leave it, is just please just reach out. It's not soft, it's not weak, it's not gay, it's not whatever you want to call it. It's just protecting yourself and making sure you don't end up. I read that guy's letter and I didn't know him, I wasn't friends with him like you were, and it hit hard, because I've written a letter like that before, and you just think, wow, and you see the outpouring, and I think the damage I would cause to a lot of people by taking myself out. Actually, there are people out there that love you. Everybody has. I've done so much shit in my life, and there's still people that will support me and love me. So nobody's ever too broken. You're never too old. You're never too broken. It can always be turned around.
Absolutely. Thank you, Andy. Friends, hope you've got something out of this. Please understand, this is an extreme situation that the military, by nature of the fact, it's still going to recruit from this pool of potentially damaged young people for, higher up that we don't even need to discuss here. That's why it requires people like myself and Andy that have insight to have the tough conversation. I please ask you to respect that. Respect Andy, respect me in your comments. If you haven't got anything nice to say, then it's best not to say it, because you don't know what mood I might be in when I read it. And I'm a father. I've got people that rely on me. You don't know what mood Andy might be in. And in addition, what you say, that represents where you are in life, not where other people are. So I'll just say that. Be respectful in your comments. Appreciate this is a tough conversation to have, folks, but it needs to be had. And we'll put Andy's details below so you can get hold of him. My email is on my website or my YouTube channel. And if you can like and subscribe, that'll be wonderful, folks. Click the notification bell. Also, if you want to get a bit more involved with me, you can do so through our locals platform, which is our uncensored platform. That's where we can talk about anything we like and why life is a bit strange and who's making it strange. Or you can just support me on Patreon or become a YouTube member. Then you get my unique private life coaching videos weekly. You get invite to my free VIP invite to my events. You get your name in the podcast credits and all these kind of benefits depending on where you join us at. There we go. Andy, thanks again, mate. Massive love to everyone. Look after yourselves. Cheers, cheers.
Cause I've been living life right like I could just die